The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
The Asian Development Bank raised Georgia's economic growth forecast by 5 percentage points. According to the previous forecast, the financial institution projected a 3.5% growth in Georgia this year. The updated forecast expects economic growth of Georgia to stand at 8.5% this year.
The updated forecast for growth in 2022 is relatively more modest. Until now, ADB forecasted 6% growth in Georgia in 2022, and according to the new forecast, growth of 6.5% is expected next year.
ADB notes that Georgia had exceptionally high economic growth in the first half of 2021 among non-oil exporting countries.
Several oil-importing countries also had high economic growth at the beginning of the year. Among them is Georgia. Its economy grew by 12.7% in the first half of the year, and economic recovery affected all sectors, which led to a revision of our forecast. We expect 8.5% economic growth, and in 2022, 6.5% growth is expected instead of 6%, the report said.
You're watching The Checkpoints with Elena Kvanchilashvili and myself, I'm David Jalavonia.
Yes, Sunday, 10 p.m. sharp, and we're here to tell you more about business and economics. And straight on topic, to follow up on the report that we just shared with you in the headlines, here is our talk with the ADB Country Director, Shane Rosenthal.
ADB raised Georgia's economic growth forecast by 5 percentage points from 3.5% to 8.5%. What are the main drivers?
Well, this is a big increase. Domestic demand is really the main driver, but we've also seen external forces behind this. Exports are up significantly. Tourism revenues, $500 million already in the first 6 months of the year, and remittances are up something like 30%. So there are many different drivers, but it's definitely happening. And it appears to be quite significant. At the same time, we all know that inflation is quite serious. We're expecting 9.5% this year, and the impact on vulnerable groups, on normal consumers, is definitely there, and we can see it also in the unemployment and poverty figures, which are at about 22 and 21%.
One very interesting quote among many in this recent report, and let me read it out. Several hydrocarbon importers also enjoyed robust growth. Notably, Georgia's economy grew by 12.7% in the first half of 2021, with a recovery in all sectors, prompting upward revisions to its growth forecast from 3.5% to 8.5% for 2021 and from 6 to 6.5% for 2022. Mr. Rosenthal, in your opinion, what percentage of this growth was caused by the higher inflation, higher prices on the one hand, and on the other by the so-called base effect?
Yeah, these are ADB projections of real GDP growth, and keep in mind that we're coming back from a very low base from 2020, when the economy experienced a 6.2% contraction. So 8.5% this year might sound like a lot, but there is a lot of pent-up demand, and the realities of things like just mentioned, like strong tourism, and we can all see that in Tbilisi and outside Tbilisi this year. I think we're back to already about 50% of the 2019 revenues in tourism. And I already mentioned exports are strong and remittances are strong. But again, this is coming from a low base last year.
What are some of the main downside risks that you see to ADB's forecast?
The main risk, I think, is a stalled vaccination rollout. We've got about a million people who have received at least one shot so far. And where I know that the goal of the government is to reach about 1.7 million or 60% by the end of the year. I think we can get there. I know that in the last month, we've seen quite an increase, I think up to 25,000 people getting vaccinated per day. But there is a slowdown now. That's also to be expected after many individuals sought their shots with the surge in the Delta variant in August and the earlier part of this month. But there's still a long way to go. And I think this is not something that's going to suddenly be over.
In this context, ADB just approved 50 million USD loan to help the government of Georgia to procure and deploy COVID-19 vaccines. But today, and you also mentioned that this process is stalled, and also we see this lack of strategic communication with the population, with those who still have doubts whether to be vaccinated or not. And we already started hearing from different people involved in this process. Important people that there might be risks of these vaccines that we already have that are now in the fridge to be soon outdated. So what does this loan expect to reach?
Yeah, I'm really pleased about this loan, which ADB's board approved earlier today. It's for $15 million. It's going to finance procurement for vaccines to cover about 300,000 people. That's about 8% of the population or 11% of the adult population. Your question's a good one. Is there already enough supply? I think in the near term, the situation is not a matter of one which is constrained by supply of vaccines. The real concern is vaccine hesitancy. And that's why under this program that ADB is supporting, we are going to be financing efforts to step up the information campaign, make the public aware of the science, of the benefits of getting vaccinated. So that's a very important aspect for us and for other development partners. But again, this is not going to end suddenly. This pandemic is something that will continue, I think, into next year. But hopefully the effects will be much smaller because the number of people getting vaccinated is going to continue increasing. And I'm actually optimistic. I see these current numbers. I think we're at 35%, 36% of the population now. I think that we can get that up above 50% this fall and beyond. And we will continue in the new year to reach levels where the economy, the economic confidence should increase, where the type of vaccination rates would be similar to some of the more successful countries around the world.
These questions are being raised because what we see as an unfortunate trend in Georgia is that the trend and the number of people vaccinated with the first jab is decreasing, and that's the trend that we are looking. That is talking about the vaccine hesitancy that you also mentioned. Probably you're getting this question very often right now, but when ADB started working with the Georgian government on this loan, because in the context of 70 million euro loan refusal, this is a question.
Yeah, first on our partnership with the government around the pandemic response and the vaccines in particular. I talked earlier about the $300 million of support that ADB provided last year to help weather the worst of the lockdown, the impact on households and businesses. By the end of last year, we were already working with the government on the national vaccination deployment plan, and we've done that also in partnership with some other development partners. But we took the lead in that process, and we're very pleased with the result. Of course, it will be updated from time to time, and that work is ongoing now. But I think your second question is in regard to the government's approach to taking loans this year.
In the context of Georgian Dream's refusal of 75 million tranche from the EU with the motive that the government did not need any additional loans, and this was a conditioned loan, and you know that the main reform that was on the table, it was the justice reform that we have also talked about its importance and several times. So my question is your comment on this context, and also probably your approach to the reform agenda of Georgia as well, because you are involved yourself, ADB, supporting, for example, SO through helping Georgian Railway.
Georgia has a strong reputation as a reformer. And over the past 2 years, ADB's engagement here has increasingly focused on support for the types of structural reforms that you just mentioned. And the loan that was approved earlier this week for the electricity transmission company reforms of GSE. This started more than 2 years ago, and in fact, the loan was negotiated with the government a year ago, in July, actually more than a year ago, July of last year. So these are not sudden decisions that either we or the government undertake. This is the result of a lot of hard work, of commitment over time to these reforms of state-owned enterprises. And this one in particular of GSE is a flagship. It's a model. It's something that the Ministry of Economy can be very proud of, that the government can use as a model to point to for some of the other very important SOEs. You mentioned Georgian Railways. ADB is already working with the UWSCG, that's the state-owned water utility. And we're in discussions with MEPA about the Georgian amelioration. And that's what our focus is on. And the reason is that these institutions, their accountability, their transparency, their ability to act efficiently is really the core constraint going forward. It's not a problem of money, of having enough financing. It's about the institutions that are using that money and fixing them and making sure that they are world class.
You mentioned that coming back to the 15 million USD loan, you mentioned that this project builds on ADB's earlier support for Georgia's COVID-19 response, including 200 million USD policy-based loan to strengthen Georgia's social protection, fiscal and debt management systems. What has Georgia achieved in this direction?
Georgia has, I think, was actually a model for a quick response last year, and ADB was simply a partner that helped them with a lot of these actions that they took. And some examples, which you may be familiar with, include an expansion of the pension scheme, increasing, I think it was by 30 lari, the amount received for those 70 years old and above. And by the way, 65% of that group were women, so this had a very strong gender impact. And also the programs that supported SMEs, or the program to ensure that households didn't suffer under their utility bills, so to help pay utility bills at the height of the lockdown. So these are just some examples, but it also helped the Ministry of Finance with some actions that it was already taking and wanted to continue with to make to protect the fiscal and debt management systems. Also, that focused on things like liabilities that some of the state-owned enterprises have and systems for assessing those and handling those. Same for fiscal liabilities associated with public-private partnerships. So all of this is going on, and it's very, very important.
Today, IMF says, and probably you have read that big 84-page document as well, that Georgia has a little space, fiscal space to cut expenses. Do you think cutting on infrastructure, on capital expenses, so to say, is the right decision? Because ADB's support to Georgia is also heavily directed to that direction.
Capital expenditure is the easier area to be more selective. And that doesn't necessarily mean cuts. It can mean delaying programs. It can mean and should mean being more selective when the government looks at which capital projects to plan for which time period. And we've already seen some of that with some capital expenditure programs being delayed, and we support that. We have to be very careful in ensuring that the scarce resources that the government has are very well used for programs that provide benefits, that are true and sustainable investments in the future.
So for the future growth, economic growth that we all need desperately need for the post-pandemic period, you think that, for example, social expenditures would bring a bigger benefit to the economy rather than capital projects?
I think there are three sort of pillars, if you like, that should underpin that future thinking about how to spend resources. One is what we just talked about, ensuring that we're not just looking at how much we're spending, but we're looking carefully at how we're spending it. So that means reforming and strengthening the institutions. And so the focus on SOE reform is really central to that. The second is to be very selective in choosing the projects that you spend that money on. This is actually investment, not expenditure, it's investment. And so there should be a return. And third, this is exactly the right point that you make, Eleni. This is time to invest in human capital, and that's why ADB approved a vocational skills program last year, and we're already working on a new general education program in the years ahead. Health sector is also very important. I think that the pandemic has put a spotlight on the health services in this country, and there is definitely an agenda there to ensure that expenditure, not just the government's expenditure, citizens' expenditure, is efficient and provides value for money.
What is ADB's main recommendation today to sustain the economic recovery it has started?
Human capital, the structural reforms, the selectivity in expenditure. I think these are sort of three pillars that we look to in our partnership with government.
Yes, but before that, probably still the pace of vaccination, so that we get to the point when we are thinking about this long-term development. And thank you for helping Georgia in that. And thank you for this interview as well.
Let us then proceed with the sectors that was the hardest hit by the pandemic, and that's aviation and tourism. Due to the full lockdown in the wake of the pandemic in Georgia, the number of international visitors came close to zero.
Georgi Molodinashvili worked for the checkpoints and sat down with Mariam Kruvishvili, Deputy Minister of Economy, for the extended interview on the current SWOT analysis of the sector.
Mariam, welcome to Aviation Talks, and as always, I'm pleased to having you on our program. Greetings, George. I would like to greet the viewers, and I would like to thank you for having us on the show.
Thank you for your time. Mariam, first of all, let me ask you what has changed since our last interview that was about 4 months ago, and how do you assess your activity as a deputy minister?
Of course, it is a bit hard to assess my activities, and I think the industry will assess it after some time, but I'm very proud to say that along with my team and the private sector representatives, today we are able to be proud of the achievements that we have for last couple of months. Georgia, in the beginning, we had a very vivid plan and very clear strategy what was our short-term strategy when it came to aviation. Number one, this was fast and vast recovery of aviation industry compared to 2019. Second, it was attracting new airlines and ensuring that we had new direct flights towards European or other strategic routes. And third, to ensure that we started implementing and working on the long-term policy paper as well as strategy for aviation and the airport's direction.
We heard that the ADB, Asian Development Bank, is helping Georgia to draft airport development strategy. Why we didn't have this document before, and what will it change?
I believe that times are very different today, and we have to adapt to COVID-19 reality. Things have changed, markets have changed, commercial approach in aviation has changed. So if we're talking about when is the right time, I believe that now is the right time to ensure that we have up-to-date, modern and in line with the global aviation sector and industry strategy of further development. And we're very grateful that ADB decided to be a partner and to help government of Georgia to have such document. This document will help us to measure further development plans of the airports, to measure accordingly the commercial possibilities, to also highlight what are the further opportunities of infrastructural developments, maybe expanding some of the airports or identifying new airport possibilities in different regions, which will give, of course, new life to potentially these new regions. Other than that, of course, we believe that this paperwork, the strategy will be a guideline for Georgian government to fully be in line when it comes to further developments, investments, as well as the strategies to be implemented by different entities which are in direct line of the tourism and also aviation industry policy. At the same time, it will be a very vivid message towards the private sector representatives and investors in this field. What is the vision of Georgian government and towards where we are heading? And of course, when it comes to working on the paper, we foresee it as a three-party engagement. Of course, ADB, Georgian government, and our private sector representative. And I believe this will be the voice of the industry that will be reflected in our long-term airport development strategy paper.
And finally, I'd like to ask you about challenges that are remaining as we speak about the pandemic and its effect in general. And when shall the figures show a real growth, and what could make post-pandemic future closer and more sustainable?
First of all, I think the figures that we currently have in Georgian aviation market are already speak for themselves. And these figures are extremely impressive. And of course, this gives us full confidence to be proud of the achievements that together with private sector, we as country have managed to achieve. For instance, if we take last 8 months as an example in aviation sector, we've managed to revive 98% of the airlines that used to operate on Georgian market back in 2019. We've revived by 91% the destinations that we used to have with direct flight operation back in 2019. And of course, flight frequencies, which are extremely crucial, that has been revived by 81%. These figures are not only appraised by us as a success story, but I'm very proud to say that Eurocontrol ranked Georgia as #2 in August as one of the fastest recovery speed holder destination for aviation. This gives us, of course, very positive expectations in upcoming future. However, of course, there are still challenges engaged by global pandemic. But of course, like in so many other fields, but especially for tourism and aviation, vaccination speed worldwide is the number one aim that we should all strive for. Tourism and aviation should be as safe as possible. People should feel comfortable to travel. Now, airlines should have confidence in both of the countries when they operate, because airlines, as you know, need two-way traffic, both inbound and outbound. So I think it's a process, and most importantly, we all have to adapt to new realities. We believe that as Georgia, as a country, we've done everything in our power to modify also our instruments, also the packages that we offer to our international partner airlines, to ensure that we remain competitive, we remain safe, and we remain attractive to both travelers as well as, of course, the partner airlines.
Thank you very much, as always, for a very interesting comments and interview, and thank you for your time for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Interesting indeed. Now let us turn to the international perspective. Our reporter Salome Metskvarishvili worked for the checkpoints, and we have the opportunity to offer our viewers and followers an interview with Wizz Air.
About very good news, by the way, David. The thing is that the Hungarian low-coster airline Wizz Air is adding a new destination from Kutaisi International Airport to Abu Dhabi from 16th of December. The Ministry of the Economy of Georgia hosted the representatives of the airlines 10 days ago.
Apart from the new flights, Elena, Wizz Air announced restarting the routes to Vienna, Barcelona and Berlin. How the airlines assess Georgian business climate, and how do they plan to compete with the other low-costers in Georgia? Andras Rado, Corporate Communications Manager at Wizz Air, answers our question.
First of all, thank you for taking our questions, and I'm really glad to see you in person, because due to COVID-19 we had no opportunity to see each other and we had conversations only online.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's so good to be back to Tbilisi and to see you in person, because yeah, Zoom is not the same as being here in Tbilisi.
Yes, of course, I agree. So let's start. You have just announced that your starting flight to the new direction, it's Abu Dhabi. And why Abu Dhabi, and from which date can we plan our trip to United Arab Emirates? Because we know that you had flights only to Europe.
We were very delighted to announce the start of our Abu Dhabi route as of the 16th of December. And we think that it's a very interesting city. It's a fantastic country, and we wanted to give the opportunity to Georgian people to enjoy their lives a bit after this very long period of lockdowns and restrictions, both in Georgia and anywhere else in the world. And of course, Georgia is a fantastic country. I've been here many times in the past years, and I know that it is worth coming here. And we wanted to give the opportunity to the people in the United Arab Emirates. And I'm not talking only about locals, but there's a huge expat community in Abu Dhabi. So millions of people live, millions of foreigners live in Abu Dhabi. And we want them to have an opportunity to visit Georgia in the winter or any time in the summer. And I think for Georgians it will be a fantastic opportunity to fly out to a hot seaside destination in the middle of the cold winter.
And you're restarting flights to Europe route too. This is Berlin, Vienna, Barcelona. Why now? Why did you decide to restart these flights today?
We've been checking continuously where we could fly from Georgia. After this long lockdown, we gradually started reopening routes between Kutaisi and different destinations in Europe. And now we see that both Georgia has eased on the restrictions. It was very easy for me yesterday to come into the country. I just showed my vaccination paper, and it didn't even take me 10 minutes to get into the country. And the same happens now in Europe, different governments ease entry requirements, and we simply live with these opportunities. We simply want to give an opportunity to Georgian people to visit these countries.
Wizz Air restarted regular flights from Georgia in spring, as I remember.
Yes.
So how can you assess the demand after several months?
We see a growing demand. And there are different reasons. First of all, like in many other countries, people in Georgia also want to travel. We see that there is a need for traveling. We see that people love to travel, and the past year in all of the world kept us in our countries, kept us in our homes. And once the doors open, once they push the play button again, everybody wants to go out. We saw that during the summer from Georgia and in other countries as well. So we saw that the number of passengers did rise. People were enjoying the beaches in Greece, in Spain, in Italy, or in many other countries. This is one reason. The other reason is that there are people working abroad. So it's easier to return to work to Germany, for example, or return from Germany to Georgia. And finally, I think this is a very good news, city breaks are possible. Due to the vaccination papers, due to the easy PCR tests and no quarantine requirements, you can go for a weekend to any European city, and I think we've all been missing that.
In July and August in Georgia, epidemic situation got worse, and we had 5,000 new COVID-19 cases. Has the customers' behavior changed because of these facts?
No. Wizz Air has introduced very stringent health and safety measures on board their aircraft back in 2020. So we were one of the first airlines to introduce the compulsory masks, and we see that our passengers, the vast majority of our passengers, understood that it's for the common good, that everybody has to wear a mask all through the flight, and they are fine with that.
They are wearing masks on the board, but if in countries not good epidemic situation, did they change their mind to come in Georgia? I mean that.
People who are traveling are either vaccinated or having a negative test. So I don't feel that entering to Georgia or leaving Georgia to another country would create any risk.
Several years ago, Wizz Air was the only low-cost airline in Georgia, but now situation has changed. In the last months, we in our country entered in our market several low-cost airlines. So, what would be your strategy, and what would be your competitive advantage now?
We concentrate on our business, and we are happy that some other airlines also entered Georgia. It might sound strange, but we like competition because we believe that competition is for the benefit of all. Competition makes all players keep their mind sharp. They need to stay focused, which means they have a very sustainable business. It means that prices will need to stay low if there's a competition. So it's all good for the passengers. We have a competitive advantage that our cost base is really low, which means that we can keep our prices low, our fares low for the passengers. We have an established brand in Georgia. People know who Wizz Air is. We have a lot of routes. We are planning to add more routes. We are committed to developing our presence in Georgia. We are actually committed to hiring more people from Georgia. We have a lot of new positions in the airline. We need to hire 2,000 people per year because we are growing our fleet to 500 aircraft in the next decade. We currently have 144 aircraft, and we'll have 500 by 2030. So we need people, we need Georgian people, we need Georgian people in the flight deck, so we need pilots, we need cabin crew, and we would mostly welcome Georgian people in our office, in our headquarters in Hungary as well.
What is the amount of investment you have done in Georgia already?
It's hundreds of millions of euros. It's hard to estimate. We usually count it with the number of aircraft, but it's indirect investment as well. I mean, we pay wages here, we pay taxes here, we support the local tourism, and tourists spend a lot of money here in Georgia. So that's also kind of indirect investment here.
How would you evaluate Georgian business climate generally in your sector, of course? And what would be your recommendations to our government, and not only for them?
I think it's a very, very good business climate, and I've been coming here for the past 3 years, and every time I felt that it's very welcoming, very open, very transparent business culture here, where you can easily make business. We are very happy with the developments in Georgia. Unfortunately, COVID really pushed the pause button for us, but I think we're already playing again, and we hope that we can start more routes. I mean, we had over 40 routes in 2019 from Kutaisi. That's fantastic. We had that amount of routes from Austria and from some other really big bases. We plan to have that set up again. It just needs time. It just needs a bit more time, and we hope. We see that the government is very supportive. We see that the business climate in Georgia is very supportive.
Sometimes when investors are talking about Georgia, they say that there is a very small market and this is some kind of issue. Is that a problem for Wizz Air too?
I don't think it creates any barriers for us. It of course will add the limit until where we can develop. But I don't think we're there yet. We're far away from that imaginary limit, and I think let's separate into two. I think there are Georgians traveling abroad. That's one market, but there is an infinite market of foreigners traveling to Georgia, and we are together with the government, together with the tourism, the Ministry of Tourism, and all government stakeholders. We're working hard to get more people to Georgia, to make people aware how what a beautiful country this is.
And the last question, tell us more about your plans in Georgia. What can you say?
There's nothing I can tell you yet, but what I can tell you is that we're working on adding more flights, restarting more routes. We're in touch with the government, we're in touch with destination markets, and we're continuously monitoring our options to add more flights. We're dedicated to Georgia, and we really plan on the long run with Georgia.
Thank you for interesting answers, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Since our focus is economy and economic growth, one key factor that will be even more important during the post-COVID period for this country is FDI. CEO of Enterprise Georgia, Mikhail Khidureli, about the importance of FDI.
We had a great opportunity to present some very specific investment projects. For example, we had an opportunity to present Khaltubo Resort with different estates ready for privatization. Also, we had a chance to present them with different projects in Achara, mainly real estate and hospitality, but we had a very successful meeting with Masdar, which is an energy investment fund under Mubadala Big Holding, and with the minister's support and with the minister's invitation, we will soon have a delegation from Masdar who will come to Georgia and explore more deeply about solar opportunities, and we even talked about a very concrete specific project. So we are very glad that we have very concrete next steps, and in coming months we will share information about very high-level teams coming to Georgia, exploring Georgia with different sectors.
David, I think it is more than enough talking about the challenges that the pandemic has caused globally and very locally here in Georgia. What could be the best answer to this? I think developing the digital economy and making the digital lari a reality qualifies for the best answer. What this means, Georgi Sagadze and I sat down with the Vice President of the NBG, Papuna Lejava, to find out more. Digital lari. Very interesting, very ambitious, and very unknown
Well, no.
Ambitious, what we miss so much.
For the world. What does this project entail, and where do you see challenges and opportunities? Let's make a brief SWOT analysis of digital lari for the Czech project.
Elena, Georgi, first of all, thank you for inviting me to speak
Pleasure is ours, please.
This topic. Yes, let me start by saying what is digital gel. The digital gel is just another form of gel. It's not a new type of money. It's same as a lari, but it's a different form of it. Yeah, we currently print cash on the paper. Tomorrow we'll print cash digitally. Yes, and opportunities are not fully observed, and I would say unlimited, because this technology brings to the market a new way of developing fintech technologies. It's a form, for us primarily it's a form of exchange, and we want to assign it a legal tender status and buy services and goods with lari, but digital lari, but on top of it we can build different layers. Not we as a central bank, but as a country, fintech companies, banks can build different layers with different services like smart contracts, the instant payments, wallets, and so on, which can develop the fintech sector very quickly. Risks, of course, this is another project, and like every project, especially digital projects, it also comes with certain risks. Primarily what comes in mind with a digital project is cyber risk, and yes, digital gel will also have cyber risk, but I would say not more than traditional payment systems have. And what's more important, the technology gives us the opportunity to fight against cyber crime with new instruments. We can follow the transactions unlimitedly towards its origination, and return transactions back and cancel transactions quite easily.
You mentioned various parties involved in the project. Does that mean that it's going to be some different approach? So we would like to double check the situation within the stakeholders. I mean, where does MBG stand, and who are the rest stakeholders, and is there a space for the private sector, for businesses?
Yes, absolutely. I would say this should be primarily private sector driven initiative. We will create a minimum viable product, so to say. We will create a payment means, but actual product should be built upon it by the private sector, the banks, the fintech companies, and others. Our goal is to create just available infrastructure for these companies to build new financial products on digital gel.
And issuing the digital gel itself, which is going to be exclusively run by MBG.
That's correct. Yes, mining will not be available by private sector or other players. Only issuer will be.
It's sort of PPP as a draft version, I mean. Yeah?
Yes, it will be a public-private partnership, but we are still at the stage of defining roles more
sure.
particular to what
it's a project, it's a draft. Yeah, I got it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so what will be the technology? Will that be blockchain? And if that will be blockchain, then it would be interesting to see what are some of the differences with cryptocurrency, because we all read and we all know that cryptocurrency is not regulated, and central banks all over the world are working on this on the one hand, and on the other we see some international payment systems who are seriously considering of incorporating cryptocurrencies into their payment systems.
Mm-hmm. I can say with a very high likelihood it will be based on the blockchain technology. Not exclusively, but most likely it will be based on the blockchain technology, because its characteristics and technical specifications are quite attractive, modern, and blockchain can be used by different types of technology, so it will be compatible to different types of technology. And there was another question, Elena?
With the cryptocurrencies,
yes,
what are some of
the cryptocurrencies? There are some similarities, like for example, blockchain, it will be fast, instant, it will work 24/7, will be cheap. But it has some differences. One, as we already mentioned, central bank will be the only issuer of the digital currency. There will be no other miners. Secondly, it will not have a speculative nature, so its value will not change as quickly as currently changes for Bitcoin and other currencies. So it may have some investment value if we allow interest payments on digital lari, but it will not be as speculative as current cryptocurrencies.
Mm-hmm. So will it be regulated by NBG, and are the current regulations, laws enough to regulate digital lari?
Digital lari will definitely be regulated by National Bank. Currently, what we are contemplating is relatively light changes to the legislation, just to grant digital lari the same level of legal tender as we have for money, for paper.
Which means legitimacy for the
exactly.
digital.
It will have same legitimacy as paper money. In the future, we will see, of course, as more products are built upon digital lari, there may be more changes required in the legal system as well, just to keep this project developing. But at initial stages, we are attempting to make quite small changes and just grant the same level to digital lari as we have for paper money.
Is the market ready for digital lari? And building on what Georgi asked about stakeholders, would they need some kind of upgrade to use digital lari?
I really hope that Georgian market will absorb digital lari quickly, because what gives me this hope is the past performance of financial sector customers, as the
payment
banks,
cards,
including in the payments. Yes, as banks have been developing, mostly banks, but also other fintech companies developing new technological products. The market has been absorbing these products quite rapidly, and this gives us the reason to hope that digital lari will also be absorbed. Demand, to be honest, we do have some specific requests from specific companies, but until we have exact characteristics and exact model of central bank digital currency, which is public and known to everyone, it's difficult to say what will be the exact demand from the business sector. But as an anecdotal evidence, we do have a few ideas and few companies that are talking to us and having their business ideas about
your office is in close connections and coordination with other national and central banks, including our region as well. What I've heard is that Turkey was definitely running this project. Also, Russian Federation was thinking about this project as well. I do not have so far any news about Azerbaijan or Armenia. Where are we? Are we still the leaders in these regards? I mean, in the digital currency, because I know what's going on worldwide, but I'm interested in our region. Where our neighbors are up to?
I wouldn't say we are the leaders anymore, because there are about 85% of world central banks that are in some way or another working on the central bank digital currency. Some are doing research, others are doing pilot. There are a couple banks that have already launched the central bank digital currency. We want to be at the front side of the trend and not be lagging too much, and I hope we can achieve this. But unfortunately, I cannot say at this stage that we are the leaders, because about 35 central banks have already piloted the digital lari. We have not yet.
What is the reason for that?
Well, it's a good question, and probably why now is also a good question. The current technologies that we are using for cash has been invented about 5 centuries ago by China. Since then, we've seen a lot in technology, in finance. We've seen a lot of developments. The 20th century was technological revolution. The 21st century is a revolution for the payments industry. But we are still using the same old cash for transactions, right? Central banks are starting to realize that they will have to offer new means of payment, which is more modern, more compatible to modern technologies, to allow their core function to create means of payment, be modern and not lag the development in the rest of the financial technologies fields.
Thank you so much and good luck.
Thank you.
Can't wait.
I wish this will be the
Quick
best,
and effective.
Yeah, the best answer to the pandemic.
Absolutely.
As well.
For the further
so
development of our
wish you
financial
success.
system as well. Good luck, Papuna. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's all for today. We will see you on Sunday, 10 p.m. next week, and update with the full picture of elections, analyzing its impact on business and economics.
Indeed, David, we keep our focus on the beat and on analysis. You, my dears, know you have to follow us on Forbes.g and bm.g for immediate news and more. Till Sunday.
The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.